We are playing NeoBrand or Allosaurus Evolution once again, and this time we're running up against Eldrazi Tron. This is our opening hand. It's kind of risky. It also could be a turn 1 kill, so it's got that going for it. So turn 1 kill is we get to reveal Chancellor of the Tangle, so we get extra mana. We can then Manamorphose to make green-blue. Oh, well, we don't even need to Manamorphose necessarily, but that will draw us an extra card. I think we're on the play here, but that means that potentially we can draw into Neo form, then we summon this Pact for Allosaurus Rider, and then Neo form into Grizzlebrand. So there's that. Also, Manamorphose is going to draw us a card, so we can dig deeper to find Eldritch Evolution or Neo form. So I decided to run with this. It's not the ideal hand, but I thought I'd take the chance on a risky but potentially very dangerous keep. Or else on the draw here, so I think that makes this hand better. It's one of those Urza's Mine and Chromatic Star, so figuring they're on just general Tron. At this point in time, so conscious that we need to be a little bit quick. So Chancellor adds the green mana. Draw into a Breeding Pool. Gonna cast Manamorphose here just to see if we can find the Neo form. I mean, even if we don't want to go off here, it would just be good to go to find it. And using Manamorphose here as a draw card is not too much of a problem, because we've got enough green cards in hand that we should be able to cast Allosaurus Rider when the need comes. Unfortunately, we don't get there. We draw Gemstone Mine, so passing the turn, but not a bad spot. Couldn't play, cracks the Expedition, the Chromatic Star, plays Ancient Stirrings and plays an Eldrazi Temple, so that clues me into what they might be up to. And this is more likely to be Eldrazi Tron than traditional Tron. That plays a Relic, which is fine. Our deck isn't really graveyard based in any meaningful way. For another land, so we're flooding out a little bit. Here, unfortunately, we'll place another Eldrazi Temple into a Thought-Knot Seer, which isn't the worst here, to be honest. We've got double Summoner's Pact, so we've got access to Allosaurus Rider regardless of whether they take that or not. And then really the only other option there, the worthwhile option, is taking the Simian Spirit Guide, so that's what they go for. Which isn't a bad idea for sure. Just make us harder to produce mana. So Boneplate cracks a Chromatic Sphere, and then makes a 2/2 Hangerback Walker, which I'm not really very scared or interested in. Unfortunately, we draw another land after drawing Simian Spirit Guide last turn, so we've really drawn no action thus far, and we're kind of getting into a troubled spot. We're down to 10, and that means even if we Grizzlebrand like next turn, we're only going to have 1 activation, which might not be enough. And yeah, draw another land. So we're going to Summoner's Pact here. Sorry, I clicked through that a little bit fast, but we're going to Summoner's Pact here and get Allosaurus Rider going, exiling the Summoner's Pact and the Chancellor. It gives us a blocker. Obviously, I didn't want to do that earlier. We could have done it a turn earlier, but I didn't want to do it earlier in risk of running into a removal. We should have played the land first as well. I think we've played land after casting Allosaurus Rider, but there's a good chance that our opponent's running Dismember, so we should have played the land first. Fortunately, we get away with that one. Our opponent just puts a counter on their Hangerback Walker, and then cracks the Relic. we've got 6/6 here, which is going to hold back these guys for a bit. Opponent just passes. We have to pay for our pact. We draw Lightning Storm, which is not a good draw as well, so I'm drawing a lot of blanks here. Opponent plays a land, and this gives them exactly 10 mana for their Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger, and yeah, that wraps things up, unfortunately. So yeah, I've gotten a bit unlucky, to be honest, in that we just drew blanks for like the whole game. I mean, I guess that is kind of the deck's fault as well, but yeah, we came close. We played pretty much the fairest game of Magic I've ever played with this deck, in that we actually played Allosaurus Rider as a creature and tried to use it for combat purposes, but yeah, unfortunately our opponent ended up getting to Ulamog and doing something more broken than we could amass to, so that was not great, but I think the positives we can take away is that our opponent's deck isn't terribly fast. Thought Not See is a bit of a pain, potentially taking one of our key cards out of the hand, so we need to be conscious of that. But yeah, they weren't terribly fast, which gives us some hope for games 1 and games 2, and we'll also take a look at the sideboard options. So in terms of sideboarding, we have Leyland of Sanctity, which turns off Thought Not Seer, but I think that's kind of a waste, given that that's all it really does in that matchup. Then after that, Pact Implication is not really a card we're looking at. We want the Artifact Destruction for sure. Obviously they have artifacts, and I imagine that that is what their main sideboard cards against us are going to be. Expecting cards like Needle and potentially Grafdigger's Cage coming in against us. Also Echoing Truth. I quite like the idea of Echoing Truth on Thought Not Seer, just to draw the extra cards, or at least draw a card. So I think I'm going to bring those in. Also could deal with like Ensnaring Bridge or something similar. I suppose they're probably not running Ensnaring Bridge, but there are problematic artifacts around, which Echoing Truth is a decent answer to. Chalice seems bad. We could bring in Lab Maniac. I don't think I did bring it in the second game, but we see Needle out of our opponent in game 2. So I definitely decided to bring that in. That's kind of the main reason to have Lab Maniac in the sideboard, is people can Needle, and if they've got multiple Needles, they can Needle Lightning Storm, which is problematic and takes away that kill condition. So you can have an alternative in Lab Maniac. So let's go to game 2 and see how that went. Okay, so we're going to be on play here. This is our opening hand. It's got double Summoner's Pact, which means we've got access to Allosaurus Rider, but it has no way to dig any deeper into the deck, and we need a Neoform or an Eldritch Evolution. So I don't really like this hand. So we've only gone 6. This hand looks a lot nicer. So we've got Neoform and Eldritch Evolution. We've got Serum Visions to dig into an Allosaurus Rider, and we've got Nature's Claim as an answer to any artifact hate our opponent might have. So yeah, this is a pretty solid hand. We just need to dig for that Allosaurus Rider. It's also relatively Thought Not Seer proof, in that we are likely to be able to combo off the turn that we get Allosaurus Rider, or some way of finding Allosaurus Rider, so they'll end up taking the Neoform, and we'll still have Eldritch Evolution or Evolution. So we're on the play here, we're going to Serum Visions, and lucky us, we've got double Allosaurus Rider on top. I think I keep both on top, but there's no actual logic to doing that. Should have bombed one, I guess, to sort of push us towards Nourishing Shoal. Oddly, our opponent doesn't actually play anything on their turn. They don't even have a land. So it seems like they might have hedged their bets on like a really hate-filled hand, but with nothing else going for it, I guess. Well, landless, I guess, ultimately. Which seems like a big risk. I don't fully understand what they were going for there. So as we already know, we're drawing Allosaurus Rider here, so we can turn to Griselbrand. I'm just going to pass the turn. I mean, it's unlikely that our opponent has something that's 1 mana and deals with Griselbrand, but we don't know, so I'm going to pass the turn. Unfortunately, our opponent does have something that's 1 mana and deals with Griselbrand, and they drew a land that they were presumably lacking in turn 1 unless they misclicked. So we're going to have to go off here in response to that. I mean, I suppose we don't necessarily have to, but it seems like a good idea. I mean, I guess we still get to attack with Griselbrand, so we don't have to go too deep. We could just see if our opponent can ever kill Griselbrand and just keep attacking them for 8. But I think we're in a good spot here anyway, so... and our first 7 cards gives us a good indication that we should be able to draw most, if not all, of our deck. Because we've got the Summoner's Pact and Nourishing Shoal. So we can gain 15. And then just keep drawing. And then draw some more cards. Draw all but 1 card of our deck, and then we're able to Lightning Storm here. Should be able to finish off our opponent. Even if they've got a hand full of lands, as I say, we've drawn the majority of our deck. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 extra lands. So I think we should be good, even if our opponent does redirect our Lightning Storm. As it turns out, they don't, and they just concede. So managed to get that one wrapped up nicely. Kind of strange that they didn't have a land in their opening hand. I guess they were kind of all in on this Needle, just beating us, hands down. But fortunately, we managed to combo on turn 2, which wrapped things up nicely for us. As I said when I was looking at sideboard as well, I'm fairly confident I didn't bring in Lab Maniac initially, because this is our whole deck, but for 1 card. So yeah, fairly confident I didn't bring in Lab Maniac, but after seeing Needle, I figured if they've got multiple Needles, they'll probably name Lightning Storm, and that seems like something we want to avoid. So having an alternate win condition seems like a good idea for game 3. Okay, so this is our opening hand. We have got Nature's Claim, 2 Chancellors, Lab Maniac, Rider, and Botanical Sanctum and the Yavimaya Coast. So this hand is interesting. It doesn't have any way to dig for the card we need, which is Neoform or Eldritch Evolution. But it does have an Allosaurus Rider that we can cast very easily. And it also has turn 1 Lab Maniac, because we're going to get 2 mana off these Chancellors. So I don't know if it was right or wrong, but I decided to keep this hand because it felt kind of spicy. Which I think it is. It's going to be fun. I mean, we're going to get to be able to play Lab Maniac on turn 1. And there's a reasonable chance that's going to get to attack and go relatively far, depending on what our opponent plays, but they're not likely to have a 1-drop. So that gets them closer to dead. It means that we can Lightning Storm kill them with less lands in hand. And so I kind of like that. We also draw Serum Visions because we're very lucky, and that's kind of the perfect card. I mean, obviously the perfect card would just be Neoform, but other than Neoform, I'm pretty happy to be seeing Serum Visions on top, because that's really what we need, is a way to dig deeper. So opponent plays another Tron land, they Ancient Stirrings, finding Urza's Mine, so they're going to have turn 3 Tron, which is certainly worrying. So we kind of have to hope that we draw something good here, in case that they just blow us out next turn. Fortunately, we draw Simian Spirit Guard, which isn't much good. Serum Visions finds a land, and then we've got 2 lands on top, so we're going to be bottoming those. I'm glad to see the back of them. So we are at risk here. This could be very problematic. I'm not even sure what the worst thing that our opponent could cast here is. I guess Thought-Not-See is actually pretty bad in this situation, just because if they get rid of the Allosaurus Rider, we're in pretty rough straits. I could have cast the Allosaurus Rider preempting a Thought-Not-Seer, which might have been a good play. I don't really know. Obviously the risk is that they have Dismember or some other removal spell available to them, like Spatial Contortion, because this is only going to be a 3/3 currently. So I kept it in hand, but maybe there's a good argument to just cast the Allosaurus Rider in this scenario. Opponent plays Chromatic Star. 6 mana, uses it to play a Hangerback Walker, which isn't remotely scary, to be honest. I mean, it's reasonably sized, but it's probably the best thing that could have happened, all told. Top of our deck is Eldritch Evolution, so we are going to be able to go off here. Get rid of the Nature's Claim, although it could be useful. I think we're going to be in the spot where we can potentially win the game next turn. Well, or this turn, but we'll probably just pass the turn and see what happens first. And having the Chancellor gives us a decent Nourishing Shoal fodder if we don't manage to find a way to use find the worm or something better. So I decided to keep the Chancellor in hand rather than the Nature's Claim. So we get Griselbrand. And I think that's turn 3, so we've both had impressive turn 3s, but I think ours is more impressive ultimately, and much more likely to win us the game. Opponent attacks a 3 here. I don't really know what's up. We can block with Griselbrand and just gain 7 life, but I decided to, given that we're in such a strong position anyway, just take the damage. But I'm not really sure there's anything that could really badly punish us if we blocked with Griselbrand there. So it's kind of an interesting attack. I'm not sure what they were going for. I assume they just wanted to make the 1/1 Thopters, potentially, but it seemed like an interesting attack. I mean, I guess not blocking allows us just to attack with Griselbrand in the air, whereas if he had the 1/1 blockers, then could keep them alive a little bit longer, which is maybe just what they were thinking. I guess they also could have Dismember. Maybe that's it. Maybe they had Dismember, and then obviously the damage would add up on Griselbrand enough to kill it. So I'm going to draw 7 cards end of turn, because why not? Draw Nourishing Shoal. So we're actually in the position here for once, though, we can actually attack with Griselbrand, which is very good for us, and probably pretty much seals our opponent's fate. We're in a very powerful position getting to untap with Griselbrand, and even more so when we get to attack with it. So we're just going to discard down here, pitching the Neoforms, because I don't see any reason to risk losing the game by somehow punting it, although I think we're in a good position regardless. Opponent attacks a 3, pumps a load of mana into an Emrakul, the Promised End, which allows our opponent to take over our turn. So they could do a lot of damage that way, so we're going to have to combo off in response, unfortunately, but I think that's fine. So we find Summoner's Pact, so we're going to be able to worm Nourishing Shoal here, which is going to help us dig a lot deeper. We get to do it again, I believe. So yeah, we find the worm again with another Summoner's Pact. We've got the Nourishing Shoal ready, so we're going to gain 15 life again, which allows us to draw basically the rest of our deck. Opponent's on 9, so I decided to just Lightning Storm kill them because we've got it available to us and we don't actually have to put many resources into it. But alternatively, we could have just drawn the rest of our deck because we have 2 activations of Griselbrand and a Lab Maniac in play. I thought that was riskier just because I might misclick and somehow lose the game if our opponent has a way of killing Lab Maniac. And it's possible they had Dismember after that attack they made. as we discussed. So I think this seemed like the safer way to win the game, but we did have both options available to us there, which is worth noting. And yeah, that works out very nicely, and we did manage to steal the win from Eldrazi Tron. This matchup seems fairly reasonable, I suppose. I mean, Thought-Knot is kind of the main card we want to worry about. As long as our deck can perform in a reasonable amount of time, we seem pretty safe, because their deck is a little bit slow. As long as they don't get a blistering start, seems like we're in a fairly good position just to perform our combo. They don't have a ton of ways to disrupt us, apart from Needle, I guess, which comes in post-board. I don't think they're main decking that. And then the rest of their cards aren't terribly concerning. I suppose the main thing is to just make sure that our life total stays at a healthy amount so we can activate Griselbrand a good number of times, and then from there it's fairly easy to finish our opponent off because they don't have much interaction with us. So yeah, seems like a decent matchup for us, and fortunately we did manage to pick up the win this time.